Stepmom forces dad to throw me out on 18th birthday to make room for her baby. I refuse to go back after learning they stole money from my dead mom's rich family. Hey, so I've been going through a rough patch with my family, 44M, recently.
Turned 18 last week and my dad unfortunately thought it was the right time to kick me out now.
My own mother passed away when I was 3 years old in an unfortunate accident. Since then, my dad has had a long list of girlfriends and failed relationships. Even as a kid, I'd literally never see him without a woman in the house. I had a nanny to look after me during the day when my dad would be at work. And whenever he would come back, his girlfriend at the time would be with him. He cut ties with my mother's family after her passing because he didn't see the point of keeping in touch with them. And I assumed they didn't want a reminder of the tragedy, so they didn't claim my custody to be able to visit me either. So growing up, it was just me and my dad. But he never seemed very interested in being a father to me and mostly spent his time either working or hanging with his girlfriend, whoever it happened to be at the time. I tried really hard to get along with him as a kid, but I never received any love and affection from him, and he just did the bare minimum for me. So I gradually learned to expect nothing at all. And that was my childhood, lonely and kind of sad. But, thankfully, I still had my grandfather to keep me company occasionally. He'd visit me often and was pretty much the only family that I had. Unfortunately, he couldn't take me in because my father didn't want to give up my custody, for some reason. And my father is just cold but never cruel towards me, at least not when I was a kid. So I don't think my grandfather had enough legal reasons to try and take me away either. Sometimes he'd visit me and at other times I'd go to him, but my father made sure, very carefully, that I didn't end up spending more than maybe 3 or 4 days at his place, in case I wanted to stay over for a while. My visits to my grandfather were regulated by my dad, and I still don't know why he was so finicky about it. But I don't know that for whatever reason my father wasn't willing to give up my custody, and even though he treated me coldly, he still wanted to keep me around, and it still doesn't make sense to me. As I got older, I began to rebel because I wanted to spend more time at my grandfather's place as compared to my father. Obviously, it was because my grandfather showed me more love and affection and actually seemed to care about me beyond just the basics. But my father wasn't willing to let me. And even when I brought up how my grandfather treated me infinitely better than he did, my father would still say that at the end of the day, he's my dad and whatever he says, goes. My grandfather tried to get my dad to treat me like his own kid several times, but nothing ever changed. Neither did he let me move out and live with my grandpa. And so, even in my teens, I had to continue living with my father. That was pretty much the worst phase of our relationship, and things only got worse after he met my current stepmother Veronica, 28F. Veronica used to be our neighbor's niece who'd been living with our neighbor until her company was able to provide her with proper accommodation. But then she and my dad started going out and they got married about a year ago after almost 8 months of dating. My dad seemed to dislike having me around but never did anything about it. Until Veronica came around, and then the both of them turned pretty vicious towards me. Veronica had it in for me ever since the first day, and I had no idea why. It's not like I'd done anything to her, and in fact, I always tried to be very nice to her, but she hated my guts. I guess it had something to do with the fact that I was my dad's son from his previous marriage, and she couldn't stand the fact that I was still around. Because, that was just a reminder that my dad had been married before or something. But that's just my theory of why she hated me so much. Maybe she just didn't need a reason to hate me, and that's the kind of person that she was. I don't know. The bottom line was that she hated me, period. And my life got a lot worse after she started dating my father. She'd make it a point to be as horrible to me as she possibly could whenever we were in the same room. She practically treated me like a housekeeper or something and would make me do all the chores, even though we had a maid, and my dad never said a word against it. I felt like Cinderella in my own house, once she moved in. And not only that, but she also made my dad stop giving me money for whenever I wanted to go out with my friends and stuff, which had never been an issue before. She convinced him that I was old enough to get a part-time job and learn how to make my own money, so there was no need for my father to spoil me. And I had to get a job after that, so I'd be able to go out with people and actually pay for stuff. Which was a much easier alternative than begging my dad to treat me like a human being. It was horrible because Veronica seemed bent on making my life a nightmare at my father's house. And I couldn't wait for the day that I could finally go away to college and move the heck out of this place. I did tell my grandfather about the way that I was being treated at my father's place after Veronica moved in, and he told me that he'd talk to my father about it and do something. But things never changed, and so after a while, I just gave up hope that maybe my grandfather would be able to make things better for me. Because if it hadn't happened so far, then I didn't think it was going to happen in the future either. I would vent to him and he'd listen to me patiently, but that's all that happened, and things never changed.